Well, let me introduce our next speaker. So one of the joys of my job is I get to travel the state, and one of my favorite places to go is Norfolk. And I don't think I make a trip to Norfolk without stopping and having coffee with this person, because it's just always amazing what he's up to and what that community's up to. And it I'm a big believer in small communities around the state, and every time I need a sort of a jolt of energy around that, going to Norfolk is a good thing. So, um, Josh, I enjoy the cups of coffee. I remember coming up one time and you kind of walking me through downtown and showing me everything that you were going to do. It looks like it's going to come to fruition. Um, Talk about, Nebraska communities, because I can't picture a time in my lifetime where mid-sized and smaller communities in Nebraska had a better chance of re-energizing, redeveloping, and building growth, not only economically, but in terms of growth of young people in their communities. So without further ado, I'm very interested in what you have to say about this process. The mayor of Norfolk, Josh Moenning.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And I thank you for this opportunity to participate in the summit today. I want to make note of what you said about your visits to Norfolk and how much we appreciate your outreach to our community. You've been here several times and you've reached out to the business community, to local leaders, and that doesn't go unnoticed. So we very much appreciate the work that you're putting in and the work of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works, and run through some slides. There we go. First, I want to greet everyone from snowy, cold Norfolk. For those of you who aren't familiar with Norfolk, I like to explain it as the Wisconsin of Nebraska. It's always colder up here. You see a lot of German last names, and we like to drink a lot of beer. So Norfolk is unique in a lot of ways, and I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing here today in terms of economic development strategy and growth strategy that I think is a little bit different than what I've experienced over the last 15 years. And I say 15 years because through various roles and capacities, I've been attending different economic development workshops and rural growth workshops across the state. And by and large, the focus really is always a couple of things: affordable housing and workforce training. And not to diminish those things or detract from them, because they are important. But I think if you don't have a community that people actually want to live in, those things aren't really going to matter. And so in Norfolk, we've tried to shift the focus with these two questions in mind. What if we started thinking of people as more than workers, more than just workers? And in that regard, what if we started to focus on building communities that people want to live in? And so Norfolk's focus, since I've been mayor, has been on growth via an enhanced quality of life. And what that means in many regards is placemaking that's rooted in natural amenity-based community development. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of our downtown revitalization efforts and our riverfront restoration efforts. Embracing uniqueness, I mentioned that each community is unique, and those attributes that make your history unique, your community unique today, can really be selling points for growth. And I'll tie that into what we're trying to do in Norfolk. And the intangibles of community growth, creating and engendering a sense of belonging among all citizens. And we've really put a focus on that through a variety of ways in Norfolk: proactive communications with citizens, making sure that our citizens know about opportunities to engage, encouraging ownership in the community. And President Carter hit on inclusivity and how important that is in reaching out to citizens of all backgrounds. One of the first things I did as mayor was to establish a Mayor's Diversity Council. And the purpose of that was to create a space where people of all cultures and backgrounds knew that this was their community as well, and they had a voice in making it better. And really that effort was all about first creating relationships, because you have to start there in these efforts and build on that. Energy, vibrancy, creativity that you can sense and feel. And that goes into being open to new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. And that really touches on and taps into what we're really trying to do in retaining our youth and attracting newcomers. And lastly, emotional infrastructure. And I'll talk about some of those things as they play out in terms of public art and beautification efforts. So I want to focus, I was asked to really kind of shine a light on some of our community development initiatives that were focused on downtown revitalization. And in the instance of Norfolk, we've put a lot of planning and effort into restoring our chief natural amenity in our downtown area, and that's the North Fork of the Elkhorn River. So again, some of you that may not be familiar with Norfolk, you're hearing me say it Norfolk, a second R pronounced, and that's for a reason. Even though it's spelled like Norfolk, Virginia, the original name of the community was intended to be by the German Lutheran families that settled this place, who settled the banks of the North Fork of the Elkhorn River. Nord Fork, in the German variation of compounding the name. But once it was, the name was registered to the post office back east, there was a lost in translation mishap, and the post office sent it back Norfolk, thinking that the settlers had to mean Norfolk as in Virginia or England. And so that's how the spelling came to be. But in true stubborn German fashion, the locals still to this day pronounce it Norfolk. And the river project that I'm going to talk about here briefly is an effort to reconnect people to the river at which the community was founded, reconnecting the river to a historic park in the community, and reconnecting the city to its namesake. So the mechanics of this project, you'll see here the North Fork of the Elkhorn River really bisects the community. And this portion you're viewing here is just off the northeast portion of our downtown. This is where Norfolk really was started. Again, the German settlers settled on the banks of the river, and where you see just south of the river portion to the east of North First Street was one of the first commercial endeavors in the city, a flour mill that was powered off a dam on the river. There's still, all that went away. The industrial uses of the river have all changed, like many river towns over years, and a lot of the industry gave way to commercial development and other uses throughout the years. So the flour mill is gone, but a remnant of the dam structure that powered it is still there. And under that First Street bridge, there is a spillway, which is a remnant of the dam structure, that creates a 13-foot drop there abruptly, which makes the river as it is today unnavigable for recreational use. So the idea behind the river restoration project is removing that spillway, and in its place, putting in 8 different drop structures over a 1,500-foot span that will essentially and effectively create a whitewater park in the middle of our downtown. And why is that important? Because we think that it brings with it recreation and tourism opportunities that will help further business growth and private reinvestment in the area. So the North Fork, this is the North Fork. These are my kids. This summer we took a trip down the North Fork. You put in north of town, and you can tube or kayak on the North Fork through Norfolk. It's about a 2.5-3 hour float, but the major obstacle is that spillway in the middle. And so once that is removed, you have this from north to south 3-hour float with a whitewater park in the middle, which is a pretty unique setup for this kind of river feature close to approximate to a urban setting. There's not a lot of environments like this throughout the state or the region. And so again, embracing that uniqueness of what it can be and what it can mean to our future growth. So why does this all matter, and why are we putting in the time and effort to do it? To me, it's natural amenities-based community development. The Sioux Falls model, if you're familiar with Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that community has seen great success in recent years with their Falls Park area being a catalyst to downtown development. That project, that Falls Park area, even in the mid-90s, was kind of an overgrown, neglected mess. The city leadership and the business community came together at the time and said, look, we've got something here. We can make it a people attraction if we clean it up and fix it up, and they have. And since that time, their downtown has grown up and around it, and it has really created a vibrant, energetic, active downtown. So that is the goal here. This effort based on making our natural amenity a people attraction, prompting private redevelopment and reactivating underutilized space in our downtown area. We consider it high stakes placemaking. This is a quality of life moonshot for our community. And the purpose of it all really is creating that unique, active, vibrant environment that is attractive to youth and attractive to newcomers to the community. Along with this, and this is just the river restoration and the Johnson Park improvements, are all part of a strategy to revitalize our downtown and prompt new community growth. So downtown revitalization through public reinvestment. Downtown Norfolk has experienced a large amount of public investment here in just the last 3 to 4 years. This is just one example of an East Norfolk infrastructure spending. We've talked about that here today, how important that is to local economies. This is one example of a bridge replacement that was done 3 summers ago in Norfolk. Replaced not only a badly deteriorating bridge, but also a focus on the aesthetics and the looks and feel, extending the streetscape of our downtown, basically extending our downtown a block to the east through the transformation of the landscape of this bridge replacement project, which was about a $6 million project. I do want to note that of all these projects I'm going to be walking through here, completed and planned projects represent about $30 to $35 million in public investment in Norfolk's downtown in just the last 3 to 4 years. And this is a point where I have to disagree a little bit with Dr. Goss, who I have a lot of respect for. I don't think all local spending is bad. And when you look at local government operating as a business, and I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, you have to do the right kind of investment in order to stimulate growth. And I think as long as it's done smartly, carefully, and is done creating and forging partnerships and utilizing grant resources, this local spending can be a catalyst to new private redevelopment and growth in a community. Some more examples, the Norfolk Public Library, which is in our downtown area, was in desperate need of updating and renovation. This building was transformed through a local option sales tax funded refurbishment, about an $8.5 million project that was completed just a couple years ago. The local option sales tax, which was approved by voters, did what it was supposed to do, was designated solely for this project, and was in place for 36 months. After that period, it came off the rolls, and now we're back to normal in terms of our local sales tax collection. But the outcome for this project was, I think, one of the best libraries in the state. This is a redevelopment project in our downtown. Brosh Avenue is one of our major side street corridors, and also a key link from our downtown area to the riverfront area that I was talking about before. This is about a $5.5 million project that, again, not only replaced a badly deteriorating street, but focused on walkability, pedestrian friendliness, and greening up the corridor. So we narrowed the street. The traffic counts didn't justify how wide it was. We put in 10-foot sidewalks, including bike trails on the sidewalks, and also 8-foot of green terrace. And so the effect, the outcome will be a much safer corridor for pedestrians, and a much cleaner and greener corridor that links our downtown to the riverfront Johnson Park area. River Point Square. This is a project that converts a parking lot in the middle of downtown Norfolk into a pocket park. And you see the Johnny Carson murals there. For those of you who don't know, Johnny Carson is a native son, grew up in Norfolk. His legacy holds strong here today, and this is just one way we honor him. This project, as I should mention, the Brosh project I talked about before, is almost done. Will open to the public in the next week or so. River Point Square, likewise, is an existing construction project, is about midway through creating this space, which will accommodate community festivals, public gatherings, live performance, and again, will feature beautification, landscaping, and greening up more of our downtown. Downtown living has been a very important component of livability for building up our downtown district. Right now, we have nearly 150 housing units in our downtown. There's been a lot of effort to convert second-story storefront space into residential units, and these are just a few examples of those. This kind of housing improvements has really added to the allure and attraction of our downtown, especially for younger people. Just some examples of business reinvestment. And I should note that we are, I mentioned before, leveraging available resources. So community development block grants through the state of Nebraska, Department of Tourism grants, the CCCFF grant through State Department of Economic Development has been very important in spurring along and being the catalyst to a lot of these investment projects. In this instance, with the business reinvestment and the facade improvement program, that is a CDBG fund opportunity that's been well utilized throughout our downtown to kickstart some of this reinvestment throughout the downtown district. another example. We've seen private investment flood into Norfolk just in the last year. This is one example. This restaurant opened almost a year ago to the day. The bottom corner, that's Danny, the owner, bringing diversity in the community. Danny's a native Kenyan who is French trained. He's like an artist with a plate, and this restaurant has really activated downtown in a lot of ways. This was unused space. This was storage space before Danny worked with local investors to convert it to what it is today, which is a restaurant that would do well in any big city setting. Another example, just down the street, District Table and Tap, another young local entrepreneur who had a vision of starting his own place, had worked for Big Red Kino for a number of years and always wanted to start his own place. Did it almost a year ago, and they've been doing well even through this year, which has presented a lot of challenges through the pandemic. Shopping and retail has been a big component of downtown's growth. And so you've seen, again, more and more investment coming into creating spaces that attract consumers from not just the immediate Norfolk area, but Norfolk has a very strong retail pull factor. So people throughout the region coming into Norfolk, I tell people we have an outdoor mall in Norfolk. It's called our downtown. You have at current standing at least 10 different boutiques like this in our downtown district. The introduction of public art has been very important. This example of art alleyways, these projects were just completed in the last month. Taking alleyway space, making alleys more inviting, encouraging pedestrians to use them to get where they're going in downtown. Also a sculpture walk, which is in its second year. There's 12 different public art sculptures placed throughout the downtown district. Again, that emotional infrastructure that makes a place feel like home. This is another example of a community amenity that just was completed this summer, a skate park. Working with our local skate community, we went out and acquired almost a $500,000 Department of Tourism grant from the state of Nebraska to do this project. And without it, it probably wouldn't have happened. But the outcome in that partnership and that planning was, I think, now one of the best skate parks in the state of Nebraska, which is creating another tourism draw to our community. This is going back to the river project. Johnson Park is a Works Progress Administration project back in the 30s. You can see back then the river and the park were certainly directly connected. And so we have the intent with our river restoration to reconnect Johnson Park to the river, making that a people attraction and bringing people into the community. This is just a layout of some of the plans for Johnson Park, putting in an amphitheater to accommodate community festivals and live performances. We've put in trails. There will be a heavy focus placed on re-beautification of Johnson Park to bring it back to some of its former glory. So just where are we? So one of the big lessons learned in all of this is these things don't happen overnight. It takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of partnership. This river restoration project requires a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, which we've worked for a long time now to acquire, which we expect to get by the end of the year, which will allow us to move into final design. We're working with a design firm out of Boulder that has worked on several of these projects throughout the Midwest. They'll be able, with that permit, to go into final design and out to bid, and construction starting next year. Final touches on the project planned for early 2023. Again, stressing the partnerships involved here. This project is made possible by the grant resources and the partnerships we've formed to go about it. The local NRD has a $1.1 million stake in it. The CCCFF grant that I mentioned before from the state of Nebraska, more than $1 million. Another Department of Tourism grant for the river project. So nearly $3 million, which is the cost of the restoration project. The city has planned to pick up costs of the Johnson Park improvements as our portion of this. And going into what this means for private redevelopment in the area, we're working with local partners like our Economic Development Foundation, which recently acquired the First in Norfolk property, which we see having a lot of potential for mixed use development. Again, all with the intent of retaining youth and attracting newcomers. This is a rendering of that First in Norfolk property I just mentioned, feeding off the river and the people attraction potential of that river, a mixed use development that features new commercial space, a mix of residential and an entertainment district. I should mention that all of this, again, partnerships, we are working through an initiative called Northeast Nebraska Growing Together, which has been aided and established by the Exarban Foundation. And it's a collaboration of business, government, education, and arts leaders working on creating that downtown environment, that downtown district that will help us reverse the tide of youth out migration from our community, retain those young people, place them in tech-related jobs in our downtown district, and really create an environment, again, that's unlike anywhere else in the state. A big portion, I just want to make note of this, the third point there, cooperative scholarships through Wayne State College, working with our regional state university to bring students into Norfolk, made possible partly through a scholarship program through the state of Nebraska. In 3 years from now, 75 Wayne State seniors will be living and working in downtown Norfolk as part of their senior year throughout this cooperative scholarship program, which is going to be a huge boost to downtown Norfolk. With that, I think I'm approaching time, and I want to save some time for questions. So I will, I think, turn it over to Holly to see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Josh. We do have a number of questions, and we may even have to direct people to you with a few additional questions. Starting out, though, what would you say is the secret sauce for getting the private sector, business sector, and the community working together to develop these types of longer term visions?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in our case, you can't be afraid to plan. And the city really took a leadership role in projecting this vision of what could be created. We, again, smartly and prudently form partnerships and leverage grant resources to find the funding to start the projects. And the proof is in the pudding. And once that public improvement spending started, you saw private investment come alongside and start to create something new in Norfolk that created new energy and a new vibrancy that is seemingly contagious in our community. We have very high levels of construction activity, not only in our downtown, but throughout the community, and competition's good for everyone. One thing I did want to mention, lessons learned in all of this. I talked about planning, forging partnerships, leveraging grants, but culture change. Our city really underwent a wholesale change in how we look at being encouraging of new business, being open for business, welcoming new developers into town, solving problems, and really working with our business community on growth initiatives.
That's a good segue into our next question, which really does relate to planning. Are all the parts of the downtown redesign included in your city's master plan, or did you have a separate downtown development plan for your CDBG work? How
Right.
did that come together?
Yeah. We did go through a comprehensive plan effort early on in my my first year as mayor, and elements of it did include downtown revitalization. But again, I'll point back to working within frameworks that provide for leveraging opportunities. A lot of the projects that I mentioned were made possible through CDBG, downtown revitalization grant monies that maybe didn't fund the entire project, but helped give it a kickstart and be a catalyst to movement. And so, you know, the focus, the riverfront restoration was really a focus, and some of these other things came along with it.
Thank you. Does Norfolk have a downtown plaza?
The Norfolk's downtown really is centered on Norfolk Avenue, which is about a 9-block central district that is home to a majority of the retail and restaurants and entertainment in the downtown. So as far as the downtown plaza, the River Point Square, that public gathering space will be probably closest to what people might think as a traditional plaza setting. But again, that was why it was important to do. Frankly, we've caught a bunch of hell for converting a parking lot where, when you have a growing downtown, there's always concerns about available parking. But we think the people attraction value of that, and also being able to incorporate some new parking within that brings a lot of value to the entire district.
Thank you. One more question about how important great restaurants are for redeveloping downtown.
Very important. That has been, you know, one of the opportunities for growth that have really been latched onto by entrepreneurs. And we have a really wide variety of good dining now in downtown Norfolk, from Italian to Mexican to Indian, to the places that I highlighted that I think could do well anywhere. And so that, yes, it's very important. And I did just briefly want to mention too, economic development, being adaptive is another lesson learned in terms of overall economic development strategies. And in addition to what we're doing downtown, we recognize areas of emerging opportunity in the new economy, and areas of comparative advantage for our region. And those three things really being precision agriculture, technology rooted in sustainable ag, water quality and conservation, which President Carter talked about the importance of that, and clean energy development in both wind and solar. Those things, that energy investment in our region has helped tremendously in a lot of this reinvestment, because a lot of the industry investment here has prompted new business opportunities throughout Northeast Nebraska.
Thank you, Josh. Again, we appreciate your time today. I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, who may have one more question for you.
Josh, I just have one quick comment. I've had 2 times in my life that were both very similar, and one was in 1997. I remember coming back to Omaha. I was then living in DC, and ran into Mayor Hal Dobb at the airport, and Hal grabbed me and pulled me off to some seats, and you know, Hal gave me the 3-minute, 30 minutes of conversation in 3-minute overview of everything that was going to happen in Omaha. And I remember his remarks to me were, "You have to move back to Omaha right now because this is going to be great." And he outlined every street and every block and what was going to happen. I would say 95% of it happened, and Omaha was transformed. I had that same conversation with you the first time I came up, and you walked me down the street, and you went block by block, and you said, "This is going to happen." And I now see this today, and it's all going to happen. This is a comment. I am of the conclusion that where you have a visionary mayor and a business community that can rally and align around a visionary mayor, good things happen. So I just want to compliment you on this. It's stuff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.